Chapter 15 of The Duke of Chimney, Butte. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Duke of Chimney, Butte by G.W. Ogden. Chapter 15. The Wolves of the Range. Lambert left his horse at the saloon hitching rack while he went to the store. Business was brisk in that place, also requiring a wait of half an hour before his turn came. In a short time thereafter he completed his purchases, tied his packages to the saddle, and was ready to go home. The sound of revelry was going forward again in the saloon, the mechanical banjo plugging away on its tiresome tune. There was a gap here and there at the rack where horses had been taken away, but most of them seemed to be anchored there for the night, standing dejectedly with drooping heads. The tinkle of Alta's guitar sounded through the open window of the hotel parlor as he passed, indicating that Taterleg was still in that harbor. It would be selfish to call him, making the most as he was of a clear field. Lambert smiled as he recalled a three-cornered rivalry for Alta's bony hand. There was a lemon-rind slice of new moon, low in the southwest, giving a dusky light. The huddling sage clumps at the roadside, blotches of deepest shadow. Lambert ruminated on the trouble that had been laid out for him that night as he rode away from town, going slowly, in no hurry to put walls between him and the soft, pleasant night. He was confronted by the disadvantage of an unsought notoriety or reputation or whatever his local fame might be called. A man with a fighting name must live up to it, however distasteful the strife and turmoil, or move beyond the circle of his fame. Move he would not, could not, although it seemed a foolish thing, on reflection, to hang on there in the lure of Grace Kerr's dark eyes. What could a man reasonably expect of a girl with such people as Sim Hargus as her daily associates? Surely she had been schooled in their warped view of justice, as her act that day proved. No matter for Omaha or its refinements. She must be a savage under the skin, but gentle or savage, he had a tender regard for her, a feeling of romantic sympathy that had been groping out to find her as a plant in a pit strains toward the light. Now, in the sunshine of her presence, would it flourish and grow green, or wither in its mistaken worship and die? Vesta had warned him, not knowing anything of the peculiar circumstances which brought him to that place, or of his discovery, which seemed a revelation of fate, the conjunction of events shaped before his entry upon the stage. Indeed, she had warned him, but in the face of things as they had taken shape, what would it avail a man to turn his back on the arrangements of destiny? As it was written, so it must be lived. It was not in his hand or his heart to change it. Turning these things in his mind, flavoring the bitter in the prospect with the sweet of romance, he was drawn out of his wanderings by the sudden starting of his horse. It was not a shying start, but a stiffening of attitude, a leap out of laxity into alertness, with a lifting of the head, a fixing of the ears, as if on some object ahead, of which it was at once curious and afraid. Lambert was all tension in a breath. Ahead, a little way, the road branched at the point of the hills leading to the Philbrook house. His road lay to the right of the jutting plowshare of a hill, which seemed shaped for the mere purpose of splitting the highway. The other branch led to Kerr's ranch and beyond. The horse was plainly scenting something in this latter branch of the road, still hidden by the bushes, which grew as tall there as the head of a man on horseback. As the horse trotted on, Lambert made out something lying in the road which looked at the distance like the body of a man. Closer approach proved this to be the case, indeed. Whether the man was alive or dead it was impossible to determine from the saddle, but he lay in a huddled heap as if he had been thrown from a horse, his hat in the road some feet beyond. Whetstone would not approach nearer than 10 or 12 feet. There he stood, swelling his sides with long-drawn breaths, snorting his warning. It seemed expressing his suspicion in the best manner that he could command. Lambert spoke to him, but could not quiet his fear. He could feel the sensitive creature tremble under him, and took it as certain that the man must be dead. Dismounting, he led the horse and bent over the man in the road. He could see the fellow's shoulder moved as he breathed, and straightened up with a creeping of apprehension that this might be a trap to draw him into just such a situation as he found himself that moment. The nervousness of his horse rather increased than quieted, also adding color to his fear. His foot was in the stirrup when a quick rush sounded behind him. He saw the man on the ground spring to his feet, and quick on the consciousness of the fact there came a blow that stretched him as stiff as a dead man. Lambert came to himself with a half-drowned sense of suffocation. Water was falling on his head, pouring over his face, and there was the confused sound of human voices around him. As he cleared, he realized that somebody was standing over him, pouring water on his head. He struggled to get from under the drowning stream. A man laughed, shook him, cursed him vilely close to his ear. "Wake up, little feller. Somebody's a-cutting your fence," said another, taking hold of him from the other side. "Don't hurt him, boys," admonished a third voice, which he knew for Barry Kerr's. "This is the young man who came to the Bad Lands with a mission. He's going to teach people to take off their hats to barbed wire fences. I wouldn't have him hurt for a keg of nails." He came near Lambert now, put a hand on his shoulder, and asked him with a gentle kindness how he felt. Lambert did not answer him, for he had no words adequate to describe his feelings at that moment to a friend, much less an enemy whose intentions were unknown. He sat, fallen forward in a limp and miserable heap, drenched with water, clustered of fire gathering and breaking like showers of a rocket before his eyes. His head throbbed and ached in maddening pain. This was so great that it seemed to submerge every faculty save that of hearing, to paralyze him so entirely that he could not lift a hand. That blow had all but killed him. "Let him alone. He'll be all right in a minute," said Kerr's voice, sounding close to his ear as if he stooped to examine him. One was standing behind Lambert, knees against his back to prevent his entire collapse. The others drew off a little way. There followed the sound of horses as if they prepared to ride. It seemed as if the great pain in Lambert's head attended the return of consciousness as it attends the return of circulation. It soon began to grow easier, settling down to a throb with each heartbeat, as if all his life forces rushed to that spot and clamored against his skull to be released. He stiffened, sat straight. "I guess you can stick on your horse now," said the man behind him. The fellow left him at that. Lambert could see the heads and shoulders of men, the heads of horses against the sky, as if they were below the river bank. He felt for his gun. No surprise was in store for him. There it was gone. He was unable to mount when they brought his horse. He attempted it in confusion of senses that made it seem the struggle of somebody whom he watched and wanted to help but could not. They lifted him, tied his feet under the horse, his hands to the saddle horn. In this fashion they started away with him, one riding ahead, one on either hand. He believed that one or more came following, but of this he was not sure. He knew it would be useless to make inquiry of their intentions. That would bring down on him derision. After their savage way, stolidly as an Indian, he rode among them. To what end he could not imagine, but at the worst he believed they would not go beyond some further torture of him, to give him an initiation into what he must expect unless he accepted their decree that he quit the country forthwith. As his senses cleared, Lambert recognized the men beside him as Sim Hargus and the half-Indian Tom. Behind him he believed Nick Hargus rode, making it a family party. In such hands, with such preliminary usage, it began to look very grave for him. When they saw there was no danger of his collapse, they began to increase their pace. Bound as he was, every step of the horse was increased torture to Lambert. He appealed to Sim Hargus to release his hands. "You can tie them behind me if you're afraid," he suggested. Hargus cursed him, refusing to ease his situation. Kerr turned on hearing this outburst and inquired what it meant. Hargus repeated the prisoner's request with obscene embellishment. They made no secret of each other's identity, speaking familiarly, as if in the presence of one who would make no future charges. Kerr found the request reasonable. He ordered Hargus to tie Lambert's hands at his back. "Guess you might as well take your last ride comfortable, kid.